This time I've got a piece of video history in the shop. I'm talking the first model of the first camcorder that was ever available for sale, the Sony BMC110 Betamovie. This is a piece of video history. This is almost a museum quality sample. This is the first camcorder ever released. 1983 was when this camera came out. Prior to this, you carried around a separate camera and a separate recorder. I don't care what anyone says about any other brands, about when JVC brought out their little VHS-C camera. It wasn't before this one. This was the first camera on the market. It's a Satacon tube camera. This was before the CCD or CMOS sensor was invented. This is a tube camera, and it does not even have an electronic viewfinder. It actually has an optical viewfinder. You're looking through the lens right there, an optical viewfinder. So it's like a single lens reflex. There's a mirror in here that picks up off of a prism so that you can see what you're shooting. It also does not have autofocus because autofocus had not been invented yet. It has a power zoom that you can zoom manually, but this is fully manual focus. And this was the camera that started it all. This camera is actually quite heavy. I think it weighs in probably about 10 pounds. It's heavy, but it's a hell of a lot lighter than what you carried before, when you carried a portable recorder on one shoulder and a camera on the other, and the two are connected by a cable. This camera doesn't work. We're going to see if we can get this thing to power up or do something. I've got the battery charger and everything here. I don't expect that these batteries will be able to hold any type of a charge. Let's just see whether the battery itself, it's got a charge in it or whether it's completely dead. Holy crap, it's got 10 volts in it. Nah, the battery's not going to be any good. But we'll put the battery in and just see whether it does anything. I don't think it will do a thing. Or the battery contacts. Oh, the battery contacts are all corroded down here from a bad battery. So I can't see the battery doing anything, because if you look in there, that one contact is pretty green down there. I don't think we're going to see anything from the battery, but it does have an external 9-volt input, and the charger actually has a 9-volt output that you can plug into it, because it's not just a charger, it's also a power supply. Let's plug it in and see whether it does anything. And indeed it does not. The power is turned on. And oh, I saw a caution light there. I see a caution light. It just clicked. But it's got... Okay, maybe we've got a problem with the plug. It seems when I wiggle this plug around a bit, the light kind of flashed. So maybe, just maybe, we've got a problem here. Let's take this thing apart and take a look at the inside of it. Just wonder what the serial number of this unit is. How old, how many units did they make? So this one looks to be serial number 2819 or 20,219, depending on whether that first digit is a factory number or whether that's a real number. So this is either number 2819 off the line or 20,02819 off the line, depending again on whether that first digit indicated the factory. Usually Sony had the first digit indicated the factory, but the fact this one has a 3C on it, that might have been the year actually. That might have been March 1983. That might be a date code, March 83, because I don't see any other codes on here for date. But definitely 1983, because that's when this camera was out. 1984, the BMC220 came out, which was the same camera but with autofocus. 1985, the BMC550, which was the first CCD camera, and that's the same year that the GCS1, which is the other camera that I have, was released. 85. 86 was the BMC660. 87, they pulled out all the stops and they basically took the GCS1, gave it Beta 1 speed, and called it the BMC1000, and that was the last of the Betamovie. And after that, they were gone. So these weren't around that many years, but when this camera hit the market, Sony sold tons of these cameras. You have to remember, in 1983, Beta was still a very big contender in the home video market. How big? Well, in Canada they had a 50% market share in the early 80s. VHS had not dominated the market, and actually didn't dominate the market really until Blockbuster Video got going and only stocked VHS movies. But prior to Blockbuster, when all the other video stores were around, they were all basically mom and pop operations, and most of them carried both formats because Beta, especially in Canada here, Beta was still quite a big player. A lot of people were Sony customers. They had all Sony gear, and there was not a snowball's chance in hell that they were putting a VHS tape player on their Sony Trinitron. It was a Sony Betamax that they had, and a lot of people bought these Betamovie cameras because, well, they didn't want to haul around an SL2000 or an SL2001 with a camera. In fact, the SL2000 that I have, I got it from someone who had bought one of these cameras just like this, and they traded in their SL2000 and HVC, I think it was a 2400, and I picked it up for a song because the shop didn't want it. Okay, so I don't know how to take this thing apart, but I'm going to start removing screws and see what happens, because I've never opened one of these ones up, but I would imagine that if I pull out enough screws, this thing's going to pop apart. Isn't that the way we do things around here? We just start removing screws, and hopefully we can remember where they go to put them back together. Hopefully I can make this thing work, because that'd be something if I can get this thing to turn on and do something other than nothing. Not that there's much use for it, but it's better to have something that works, even if it's just a display piece. It's better to have something that works than something that doesn't work. Ah, 2 screws under here. Okay, I'll take some more screws out of the back here. Should throw some more lights on so I can see what I'm doing. It's just that the more lights I throw on, the hotter it gets. And since I don't have air conditioning in the shop, although I do have the door closed because there's construction going on close by, and I just don't feel like listening to all the noise that's going on the next street over. I will say that this camera has been well cared for. It was kept in a case. So I'm really interested to see whether I will be able to pull off a miracle and get this thing to work. Of course, the first miracle will be, how the hell do I get into it? Got screws out there. I imagine that I have to take out some more. Maybe this one here. I've never opened up one of these cameras before, so this was something that I never repaired, and that was because the camera, being a record-only model, doesn't play back. There was no way to set it up. There was no way to do anything. Anything that went wrong with one of these Betamovies, it went to Sony to be repaired. So, never took one apart. Never seen the inside of one, other than the GCS one, which, of course, I took apart there a month or so ago when I was working on that one. It will be real interesting if I could get this one to record. The very fact that it's a Satacom based camera, it's going to have a different look to the picture for sure. I just don't want to break anything taking this apart, so that's why I'm kind of being very careful as to what I remove on here, because I don't want pieces breaking on me. Would not be good. The owner of this would not be happy if it got broken. that comes off like that. Now, does this cover come off now? There, look at that. Wow. Okay, there's the guts to this one. Now, I want to check that, unplug the microphone here. I want to check the power connector, because when I kind of wiggled this thing, it kind of did something. So I'm curious as to whether maybe the solder is broken or whether the connector itself is damaged in one way or another. So let's remove this circuit board that the power connector is on. That screw is loose too. Interesting. And oh, I'd be real thrilled if I got this camera to run, believe me. Nobody would be happier than me if this camera were to work. Okay, let's just get a close look at these connections here. And I could probably apply power to this from my power supply as well. Because you can see right here there's a 4 amp fuse. If it goes to the power jack, one of these is going to go back to the one will go back to the battery compartment as well, but it looks to be that we have a power. I actually have a power jack as well, but let me just plug in power here and see whether anything happens. We'll check for some voltages right here on the power plug. Let's just see whether I've got voltage from the power supply. I'm assuming I can probably put one probe on ground. I'll talk to you while I'm doing this about something I heard on the radio today. Another dump truck today hit a bridge. This seems to be it's beyond okay, I got 10 volts, I got 0, and I got 0. Interesting. One of these is going to be negative, so we'll just see which one of these is negative. I got 10 volts there, so that is probably correct. I got 10 volts there, and I got 10 volts. I just thought, do something. You saw the head drum spin there for a second, didn't you? I wonder if this is I mean, I got power there, so you would think it would be running. If I hit the eject button, what happens? Anyway, I was going off topic there. Another truck hit a bridge. This is the bridge after a tunnel. So, like, how would he hit the bridge if he made it through the tunnel? But somehow he hit an overpass. So it's going to be traffic mayhem again today for anybody wanting to go home. They're going to be facing a long delay again, because these truck drivers just don't seem to know how to check their height. Okay, I believe that this is the power connector here. It's got a red and a black wire on it. That's a pretty good indication. One of them goes right to the center pin of the power jack. The other one appears to go over here to the fuse. So if I put this on the center pin here, and I put that one over there, I've got, what have I got? Do I have anything on here? I thought I had voltage here. What the heck? Why am I not getting any volts? Power supply is on. Or is it this one? 10 volts. Okay, I got 10 volts here. My probes are backwards here. Negative terminal is here. Got 10 volts here, and that goes over to that pin there. This one should be, ground. What the heck? I'm thinking that this is supposed to be, there should be voltage, I'm thinking, on this connector, because it's got a red and a black, and I see no volts. So what the heck is going on here? Shut up. Cats in here. 9 volts across here. Or is that the switch? There's a switch on here for the battery, the internal battery. is that, maybe this is coming from the battery. This might be coming from the battery. I bet you that's what it is. And the power is actually over on this other connector over here. I bet you that's what it is. This is the 12 volts going to the board across these ones. I think. Should be the two end pins here. Should be that one and this one. And I got nothing. Okay, where is this one going? That looks like that could be a ground. Which goes across to there. I'm going to get a close-up look at this thing. I think the power goes in. I'm pretty sure this red connector goes. You see, when I did that, I think we got a connection problem right in here. Let me get a close look at that. Somewhere in here. When I moved this around, this thing kind of came to life for a second there, and we heard the relay click and saw the drum kick there momentarily. So let's get a close look at this power inlet here. It just does something that appears to be not quite right where the power goes in. Now, that's the one pin there. That should be negative, that one, I believe, because that's this negative tip on this. Not like, it's a Sony, right? The negative is the tip and the barrel is the positive, because that's the way Sony does this crap. If Sony was a company that did that intentionally to make people blow things up when you bought the wrong adapter. Tip is negative on Sony crap. I don't know, is that connection bad here? I mean, it almost looks like that connection on that pin is bad. It's almost what it looks like right there, you see? Look, I think that's cracked. That is cracked. Look at the pin. When I move this, that looks like it's cracked. Right there. Let's put a bridge across this. I think this power connector is where the fault is. I think the ground is broken right there. In fact, that pretty much can probably measure that. Let's just check and see whether there's power across, because I put the probe on here, but what happens if I put the other side of the meter on the other side of that, what looks to be a crack? So I'll put the probe on here, and it doesn't matter about the polarity, and we have voltage. And that trace goes right around here. So between there and there, we've got power. Ha 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 ha, it's right there. Let's fix that. I wonder if this is going to be so stoked, considering what he paid for it. I mean, that might get this working. There may be other problems. I'm sure that there will be. But for starters, it's got to power up before anything else matters, right? And certainly a cracked connection will certainly be problematic. This is the switch here, right? The battery comes in here, goes through the switch. When it's plugged into AC, you've got or DC, you've got your power across these two. Battery comes in, goes through the switch, and from there it goes into the fuse, and then it comes over to this pin over here. So I'm going to put a big blob of solder right there, make sure that that pin doesn't break again. I'll probably redo these ones while I've got this apart. Why not? Because it's apart, right? And we'll see if this thing powers up. I got a cat in here I got to keep an eye on, because I don't trust them. Cats should not be in my workshop. There's lots of things that they can get into in here that will not do them any good if they were to ingest them, like little bits of wire and stuff that gets dropped. So I really have to keep an eye on the cats if they get into the workshop. And there's one that's sitting staring at me right now, and now she's getting into something. Get out, go, get in the house, stay in there. Yeah, you, get in the house. My tabby is looking at me, giving me sad eyes because she wants to come in here, but this is not safe. Get in. While I'm at it, I will redo the connectors, or the connections here on the power connector going to the board, because I've got this board out, so why not do that while it's here? And then we'll try powering this thing up. I'll put the board back in just because I don't want to have it flopping around here, possibly shorting out against something. So we'll just redo that one, and I'll redo the battery one as well, even though I'd have to fix up that battery. Oh, looks like that was where that wire went in. And it was next to it. Okay, I'm going to reconnect this on the board here. I'm just going to put it back in here just for now so that nothing shorts out, and we'll try powering this thing up and just see what happens. I got to watch out for this because there's a little gear down here for the loading motor, but let's just throw those two screws back in. I'm getting excited now. This thing might actually turn on. And I will say that the drum in this one looks to be in a lot better shape than mine. It doesn't have all the corrosion that mine had. And mine wasn't stored in a hostile environment, but it was in my storage unit. And it's not like it's not like it's damp or anything. Like mine, my storage unit is heated. So, but mine sure looked like crap. I guess maybe the moisture in the air got to it. This one looks like it was stored in a house or something, and it looks like it's in a really well preserved condition. All right, let's power this thing up and see whether it does more than before. Yippee! If I close this down, will it thread? Where's the button? There's a button down here I gotta push. And indeed, it does. Will it turn on? Probably not. Well, let's just see here. I think I might have to push this button down and hold it down. Yes, it turns on. It says tape, battery, due. Okay, caution is out. Ha! Will this thing record? I gotta hook up a beta machine now. See whether this thing will actually record, because the head drum's spinning. I hit record. What happens over here? I'll push record. It goes into record. Wow! I'm getting excited. Let's just hit the eject button here. I hook up a beta machine, grab a tape. We'll see if this thing records. Okay, I'm going to put a beta tape into this thing. Oops. It threaded. I just take a few shots on this camera. I'm not even going to try to... I'll look through the viewfinder. I don't have a microphone on here. I'll do a couple shots. We'll turn it on first of all before putting it together. And so power on. I have to wait for the caution to go out because I have to wait for the tube to warm up and get a picture. Let's see here. Daytime or light bulb? Okay, light bulb. I'm not gonna... I guess I could white balance. So let me just hit... We'll put the white cap on here, and I'll hit the white balance button, and that should white balance the picture. And take the cap off, and I'll just take a few pictures on the bench here. Oh, out of focus. Oh, whoa, really out of focus. Let me just adjust the diopter adjustment here. So I'll just kind of hold the camera here and let this thing record for a couple minutes. We'll point it around the shop, and we'll see whether this thing is actually making a recording. Again, no sound because the microphone's not plugged in. But yeah, it's cool. I mean, this might be cooler than the GCS1 just because it's a tube-based camera and it's as old as the hills. And it's the first one. I gotta say, it's cool, and I hope that it actually makes a recording. And then we'll deal with get the battery compartment cleaned up and see if it will work off of the battery. Because this is a piece of history that is definitely worth getting this one going. Even if it's never going to get used other than just to sit on a shelf in someone's collection, which it could very well just end up on a shelf. But the fact that this thing's 40 years old and it's turning is a good sign. So I guess I've done enough recording. We'll stop it and we'll eject the tape and we'll check it out and see if it plays. Well, there it is. I still hear sound from the old recording. Oh, there, now it's gone. It looks to be a bit of a tracking error. Let me see if my tracking control. But you know what? Maybe the exit side guide is a little bit off. The tracking looks to be a bit off. But you know what? It's like, holy crap, this thing's actually recording. This thing's actually recording a picture. I was not expecting this thing to record anything. But you see it. This is a 40-year-old Betamovie. It actually doesn't look bad. I wonder if I can improve that picture. Now, this is a very old tape. I should find a tape that's got less miles on than this one and try making a recording on a tape that's... This is an old L830, which is probably not the best tape to record on, just because it's what I had handy. But I'll certainly go to a shorter tape. We'll make some recordings on a shorter tape and see whether it performs any better. So far, this is working. It's working as good as I would have ever expected a 40-year-old camcorder to work. And all that was wrong was the connection to the negative pin was broken right at the circuit board. And there's some corrosion, there's some green corrosion, so one of the batteries was probably left in it. I don't know if this battery is even going to hold a charge. It appears to be charged now. I'm going to clean that up and see whether the battery actually will work, because as I say, I'm pretty stoked that this thing works and is in as good a shape as it is. Definitely a collector's item. I'm going to try another recording on this Scotch tape. This is actually the tape that my Sony training seminar from 1985 was on, because there's a portion of the tape that's got nothing recorded on. So this is virgin tape that I'm at right now, so let's make sure it's turned on. We'll wait for the errors to go away so that I can record, because it makes you wait for the tube to warm up. And now I'm recording on this old camera, and if I had to an adjustment to make it, would probably be that one, because it looked to be at the bottom of the tape where the tracking error was. I have no way of referencing this because I can't I mean, it could be the alignment even out on the playback machine. I have no way to verify, because there's no way to play the tape back, to put an alignment tape in, it being a record-only machine. I have to trust that maybe it might be the alignment off a bit on the playback machine, or it could be the alignment that's off on this. If the guides are tight, then it may very well be the machine I'm using for playback. But we'll just do a little bit of recording. I'll kind of point this thing around the workshop here. We're going to get any lens flare from the pickup tube. I have no idea what I'm shooting. I'm just kind of pointing it, and I'm probably out of focus too, but that's the way it is. Okay, let's just eject the tape, and we'll try this one and see if this one looks any better. I would say that that's me adjusting the tracking control. It does look better. The tracking looks fine. I would say that this has probably looked as good as it did last time it was used 40 years ago. Wow. No, wait a minute. Was that? No, hold on. That might be still stuff from the GCS1, because I had recorded stuff on the GCS1 on this one here. This might be this tape here. In fact, I'm sure that was the GCS1, because I had stuff that I recorded on my GCS1 there. So this is going to be this recording for sure. We'll know, because there's no sound on it, right? Or maybe this might be the GCS1 as well too. Let's see. When I pointed it around the shop, so we'll just see. I may have rewound too far is what I'm getting at. Check my tracking control. It looks to be pretty much in the dead center, so the tracking is good. And yep, that's this one, because I just recorded that. That's what I recorded right there. So that's this camera for sure. Yep. And then I'm going to point it at the bench. There it is. Yep, that's the recording off this camera. The first stuff was from the old GCS1. And of course there's no sound because the microphone is sitting on my bench. So that's the good old Satacon tube, and it looks to be in good shape too. Excellent. All right. What's even more amazing is that the pinch roller is in good shape on this one, unlike the other one that I had, right? The GCS1, which the pinch roller was all falling apart. The pinch roller is in good shape on this one, And the belts seem to be okay. Amazing. Doesn't appear to have any surface-mounted electrolytic caps. That's why there's no cap problem. This was before the capacitor plague, because the surface-mounted electrolytics had not been invented at this point when this was made. So that's one good thing. I got to get this battery compartment apart because I got to get in there to clean up those contacts. I think I can just remove a couple screws and I should be able to scrape off those contacts, and then maybe the battery will work. And there's another screw up here, I think. There's like 3 screws that hold this together, and I should be able to get in there and clean that up, and we'll see whether this thing will work off battery. That's just a bonus. Not that, oh, that takes that off. All right, okay. Will this come apart? Open that up. This battery compartment should come apart. It's, oh. Oh, there's probably another screw in here somewhere. Oh, there is. There's another screw on the bottom here that has to come out. The screws are loose too on the battery compartment, like somebody had been into them, or they just worked their way loose over the years. But that should come apart. The door will come off too. Like, there we go. There's the battery compartment. Yum! It's broken. That one's actually snapped right in half because it's just corroded like completely. That would explain why it doesn't get any power off of battery. We'll scrape these up and maybe try to solder them back together if possible, if I can get the other pin to it, because I think that that contact is right here. I was thinking if I can scrape the crap off of the contact here, solder a piece of wire over top of it, and then solder the wire down to here so that it will still act as a conductor and as a spring, then we might be okay. That's what I'm going to try to do. I'll just use like a piece of solid copper wire, like from a Cat 5 run, and see if we can get that solder onto this, and then put the spring back together. As long as we've got something that will provide contact against the end of the battery, it might work. Well, it sounded like a good idea, but it does not want to cooperate because it's springing. What many didn't know is that the battery terminals were individually replaceable on these. All you had to do was just push down a couple little tabs and the terminal would actually pull right out. So now I've got the terminal out, I can reattach these ones to the terminal, and then I should be able to just slide it back in and hopefully it will lock it into place. So we'll just trim this back just a bit, just so I can attach these wires and try to get this kind of resembling what it looked like before. Put some solder on here. I got the spring back in. I just have to reconnect the positive wire back here to the back of the terminal. I think that probably will be acceptable. Put this cover back on, whatever the heck it goes on here. Okay, battery compartment's back together. Let's see whether it'll actually power up on the battery. And indeed it does. Excellent. So let me put I'm going to put the cover on it so that I've got a microphone. Actually, I probably don't need to do that. I can probably just reconnect the microphone itself without putting the rest of the cover on, and then we can do a test recording with the camera apart. So I'll put the mic on, just kind of stick it in place here, put one screw or something in there just to hold the microphone in place, just for now, and then I can take this thing and we'll take it and do some recordings with it while it's still apart, just so that we can see that awesome tape transport in operation one last time before I throw it together. There's the microphone. We'll grab a cassette. We'll use that same cassette, and let's thread the tape up on this thing. Let you guys watch that. Oops. Love it. That was the ultimate. There's the double azimuth single head right there. It's got two heads side by side. Time compressed recording, Satacon tube. I'm going to take it outside. I'm going to do some shots outside around my yard, and we'll play it back and see how it looks. I didn't get very far. Of course, the battery is not going to hold a charge. It's dropped down to 9.6 volts under no load. The battery itself is toast. I'm sure all the batteries here are toast. What I'll do is I'm going to power this thing up. I'll take the AC adapter with me, and I'll just take one of those power blocks. So it lets me get 120 volts, and we'll take that and plug that in and tether it to the adapter and do some recording. Okay, we'll just remove the tape. I think I showed you guys before how this works, but when you're turn it on here, it does a backspace record, or backspace when it records. So for example, watch the guideposts here. When you're in record, and then when you hit stop, see? So when it does that by momentarily unwrapping and then wrapping again, what it does is the back tension arm, which is, I don't know if you can see it or not, but maybe I can get some light in here, but the back tension arm, which is up here, will move back. Can you see it? See? So what it does first is, before it releases the pinch roller, the first click, it puts the brake on the take-up or the supply hub while the tape continues to move. So watch, it stops, right? It locks this hub, then it releases the pinch roller, and then does that. So what happens is, before it actually stops recording, while the tape is still being pulled through the transport, it locks the supply hub so that it puts tension on the tape, and then it releases the tension, releases the pinch roller, and does the little ch-ch. And what that does is the spring on the back tension arm now pulls back, and it pulls the tape back slightly, which creates the backspace so that you don't get a big glitch. See? You can see the tape here move. You can see a bit of slack because the reel's locked while it's still moving. See, a little bit of slack happens here. If we get some light in there, you'll see it. I'll zoom the camera in, and you'll see how this works. So it does it without any motors or anything to backspace the tape, because it's a single motor system. There's one motor here that spins the drum and the capstan shaft and the take-up side reel, all done mechanically. There's what, 1, 2, 3, I think there's 4 belts in this. One belt from the motor to the drum, and then from the drum it goes to a midway pulley, and then from the midway pulley to the capstan, and then from the capstan to the take-up spool. But watch down here. When I pause it, you'll see a little bit of slack. the tape's moving, and see, that's quite ingenious as to how that worked. And then when you eject the tape, it's all going to get wound up onto the take-up side, because the supply side, there's nothing to drive it. So when I hit the eject button at the back here, and that's that. Let's take a look at the recording I made.
Onto this 40-year-old Betacam, not Betacam, Betamax, Betamovie, even the power zoom, I bet you the belt is about shot on here, but it is ever so slowly trying to zoom.
Alright, now I'm recording onto this 40-year-old Betacam, or not Betacam, Betamax, Betamovie. Even the power zoom, I bet you the belt is just about shot on here, but it is ever so slowly trying to zoom. But of course, this is a manual focus camera anyway. It's weird looking through an optical viewfinder. This is like using an old movie camera, looking through the lens. Out of focus, in focus. Houston, we have a problem. It seems that we have developed a bit of an audio hum. I wonder what happened there. I guess I'll have to investigate that, but we'll just keep it quiet here for the rest of this recording. That's a Satacom tube that's in this one. No CCDs. This is before the CCD has been invented. I may have to look into those batteries and see whether I can get those battery packs or an iCAD. See if I can get the battery pack. I'm just powering this up with one of my little power supplies that generate 120 volts and then running the AC adapter. My fountain that hasn't worked since the pump died on it. Should get a new pump for it. The monkey tree that's going to have to get pruned sooner than later, otherwise it's going to be growing into the soffit. Bad planning when I put that there. I can't just move it because the pot has rooted into the ground. So to move it, it's in a big pot, but to move it, well, that's going to be stressful for the plant, because the tree, because the roots have gone through the bottom of the pot and they're into the ground, so it's not something that can easily be moved. But, as they say, here is some greenery across the street. See how the color looks on this thing. Too bad all the cherry blossoms are gone. That's a cherry tree. It was all pink with blossoms there a few months back. Sure is different looking through an optical viewfinder, that's for sure. It's so sharp, right? The picture is so sharp compared to an electronic viewfinder. Even the color, like the color LCD ones. The OLED on my 4K camera is really good. Even the LCOS on my other 4K cameras is pretty good. Like they're really sharp. But compared to like the LCD on a lot of the consumer cameras, or the black and white tubes. Black and white tubes are good because you could see what the sensor was picking up in black and white. But this is pretty clear. Okay, I think we'll take this inside, we'll play it back, and we'll see how this one works before I put it back together. And then when you hit stop, it stops. Tape here move, you can see a bit of slack. Tape's moving, and
but of course, this is a manual focus camera anyway.
That actually looks very good. Sound is a little muffled.
It's weird looking through an optical viewfinder. This is like using an old movie camera. Looking through the lens.
Oh, what happened there? So I got a bit of a hum that started after I started making the recording. It could be the microphone. Could be something on the microphone. I may have touched the mic. There may be a broken wire. At least I can listen to it through headphones and hear that. There's an earphone jack, so I can plug an earphone in and hear that, and should be able to hear that that noise and get to the bottom of that. But the picture is actually excellent for a 40-year-old camera. I mean, we had nothing like this in video, right? There was nothing like this 40 years ago. This was the first camera that delivered a good picture. Because a lot of the crap that was out before then, I mean, it was really pathetic. So Sony put their best camera technology, a Satacon Trinicon tube, an SMF they call it, but it's a Trinicon using Satacon technology. So it's a beam index tube that they use. I'm going to shut that sound down because it's humming, because it doesn't know the words. But it was a beam index type tube, so the colors were very accurate compared to other single tube cameras of the day. I've talked about how the Trinicon tube worked compared to other single tube cameras in the past. The Trinicon had a mesh in behind the target, and as the beam went over this, it was a stripe, like a series of fine vertical wires, and as the beam passed over that, it produced a pulse which was used to operate the switching circuits, and it used a red, green, blue filter in front of the tube to separate the colors into red, green, and blue. And this index signal that was generated on this secondary target was used for timing. And that's why the colors on the Sony Trinicon tube look superior to the colors on everybody else's. It's because everybody else's did not have any way of reference other than the white stripe. So on a conventional color tube, you had a cyan, a yellow, and a white section of the filter on the single tube. And they used mathematics to extrapolate red, green, and blue from cyan, yellow, and a full monochrome white or all-color signal. Quite complicated the way that it worked, but it used matrices and added colors and subtracted colors and produced the color that way. Sony took pulled out all the stops and says, you know, this is a crappy way of doing it, the way that the others were doing it, coming up with the colors. Sometimes it's easier to explain when you've got a prop at hand. So here's 3 camera tubes. This is a standard Vidicon monochromatic tube that would be in a black and white camera, or a 3-tube camera would use 3 of these, one for red, one for green, and one for blue, using a prism to split. And it's just a standard magnetic deflection Vidicon tube. This one here is a Vidicon standard single tube magnetic deflection color tube that would be used on conventional color camera. If we zoom in, we can look at the color filter that's on the front. I don't know if I can get a good close-up here, but I should be able to. Before the camera goes out of focus, that is. Alright, so let's get some light on here. And you can see, if I can get the light on here without it reflecting too bad, you can actually see there's the color filters on the front. Looks to be a blue, a red, And this one actually looks to have more than 2 filters. Usually they just have a cyan and a yellow and none, but this one looks to have a few more. If we look on it, there's filters on here. But anyway, this is a conventional tube. You can actually see the colors reflecting on the different layers. It's hard with the light, the way it reflects here, but you can see the color filter on the front. This is what separates the red, green, and blue light that hits the target. And the camera has to figure out which stripe is which, and it does it through mathematics, just because of the sequence that they do it along with a non-filtered portion. This is a tube made by Toshiba, and this obviously came out of a Toshiba camera. If somebody wants to look up that tube number, they will see how Toshiba, what technology they had. It's an E5331 tube, color pickup tube. This is a Sony, out of a dead Sony camera. And the first thing you'll notice about the Sony is it's got this extra piece glued onto the front. Also, this looks to be like it's I think this is an electrostatic deflection. Almost looks to be an electrostatic deflection on this one. But this is a Trinicon. It's not a Satacon tube. This is just a straight Trinicon. But it has this extra grid. Oh, is that one there, or is it this one? I think it's this one here, actually. It's got a second target. I don't know where these wires go, because it's got 2 wires also attached to the front here. But how this works, being a Trinicon tube, is that one of these is connected to a grid. I think it's this one back here, actually. It's in behind the main target. It's in behind the photosensitive target. So I think it's this one here is the grid, that ring. And then this is the target, and I don't know what these ones are for. These might be for a bias light, actually, that is applied. There may be a bias LED that's actually inside here, a bias light. Some of them would shine a light right down the tube itself on the back and bring it down the glass. Others actually had a little bias light that was right on the front of the tube itself. But anyway, what I'm getting at is that their filter, it's a red, green, blue filter, and they use an index signal that is pulled off the tube, completely separate from the video. And this is just a pulse, and it's prior to any video signal. So as the beam scans the tube, there's a pulse that comes out every time it passes over one of these little wire grids that's in behind here. And that is used for synchronizing the color circuits. And the filter in front of here is a red, green, blue filter. And I get the sneaking suspicion that this on the front here, this is part of the bias light, because they used like a light that would provide a small amount of current flowing through the tube in low light situations. It was to improve the low light sensitivity by keeping the tube from going into cutoff. Some cameras, they actually put a light at the end of it and shine it down here, or some others they actually put a second filament inside that would shine down the glass and it would light up. Others, they used a bias light. This tube was gassy. When this one had power applied to it, it lit up like a neon tube inside. It was all like, it was like purple because it was gassy. But I'm pretty sure this was electrostatic deflection too. You can see the grids here, or the plates for deflection. Anyway, this came out of an old, I think this was an HVC, it was either an HVC 2000 or an HVC 2200. Might have been a 2200. I did a teardown on it, so you guys will see which one this came out of. If you look back in my back catalog, you'll see this one and how it lit up like a neon tube when I fired it up. Anyway, that's the tubes from the cameras. This camera here, you can see where the tube goes. It's not this same tube because this one's a Vidicon This one's the Satacon version, but it would be the same size of tube as this, and it's right here. You can see it. There's the housing for it. The back of the target of it would be probably right in about here, because there's the iris. The iris and the color filter for daytime and daylight and incandescent or indoor lighting. There's a filter down inside here. That I believe is the back focus adjustment, which moves the tube back and forth for your rear focus. We're not going to touch that because we can't see it until we make a recording, but we know it's good. That's the back focus adjustment, and then the tube is down here, and it actually goes back to, well, it would go probably back to about there on the camera. The tube socket would be right on the back here. Anyway, be the same size tube as this, but it'd be a Satacon version of this one being a Vidicon. Satacon, of course, is much more sensitive. Anyway, I'm going to power this thing up and see if I can investigate as to where that noise was coming from. Is it the microphone? Because it was quiet until I moved it, and maybe there's a ground or something that's broken in here, because that hum came up out of nowhere. We'll see if we can figure out where that hum is coming from, and then I'm going to throw this thing together. That's if I can stand the heat. It's getting bloody hot in here. It's like 30 degrees in here now because it's like, you know, almost 5 o'clock at night. The sun's been shining all day. We're in the middle of a heat wave, and it's bloody hot here in the workshop. And by the way, this was Sony's idea of an earphone to monitor your audio. That. You plugged it in there and you stuck that in your ear. And that was their way of monitoring your audio. So I'm going to power this thing up without a tape in it. I'll just push the little button down to make it think there's a tape so I can hear the sound and hear if it's to make it think there's a tape in it. Okay, power on. Okay, it's quiet. I can hear myself. I don't hear any noise. I wonder why it was so noisy when I made that recording. I can hear, like, I don't hear any noise. Huh, weird. Unless there's another problem, like a loose screw or something on one of the boards. But it's certainly quiet. I'm going to throw this thing together. We'll try it out once it's back together. But I think we're pretty much done for the video on this one. I don't think there's much more I need to go over on this. I think we've seen how it works, what was wrong with it, and indeed that it does work. So I'll let you guys see the mechanism one last time here before I throw it together. Now you can see the gears and everything when there's no tape in it and how it unloads. So here we go, unload. There, okay, I'm going to end this one now and throw this together once it cools down a bit, because it is hot as an oven in here. Thanks for watching. We'll catch you in the next one. Bye.